This is the conclusion of the Classical Theatre Company's A Christmas Carol. It was written by Charles Dickens. This adaptation was produced by the Classical Theatre Company, John Johnston, artistic director. It was adapted by Mr. Johnston and Matthew Keenan, and it was directed by Philip Hayes. In it, you will hear James Belcher, Brittny Bush, Greg Cote, Adam Gibbs, Chip Simmons, Lisa Villegas, and me, Tom Pryor. The sound design was done by John Harvey, with visualizations by Jeff McMorrough. This is part 3, the end of it. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. But for this it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved.
I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come?
The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand.
You are about to show me the shadows of things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us? Is that so, spirit?
The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit had inclined its head. That was the only answer he received.
Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any specter I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear you company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?
It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them.
Lead on. Lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me. Lead on, spirit!
The phantom moved away as it had come towards him. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up, he thought, and carried him along. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them, and encompass them of its own act. But there they were, in the heart of it, on change amongst the merchants who hurried up and down and chinked their money in their pockets and conversed in groups and looked at their watches and trifled thoughtfully.
No, I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead.
When did he die?
Last night, I believe.
Why, what was the matter with him? I thought he'd never die.
God knows.
What has he done with his money?
I haven't heard. Left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me, that's all I know.
It's likely to be a very cheap funeral. Upon my life, I don't know of anybody to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer?
I don't mind going, if lunch is provided.
I am the most disinterested among you, after all, for I never wear black gloves, and I never eat lunch. But I'll offer to go if anyone else will. You know, when I come to think of it, I'm not at all sure that I wasn't his most particular friend. We used to stop and speak whenever we met. Bye-bye.
Scrooge was at first inclined to be surprised that the spirit should attach importance to conversations apparently so trivial. But feeling assured that they must have had some hidden purpose, he set himself to consider what it was likely to be. Nor could he think of anyone immediately connected with himself to whom he could apply them. But nothing doubting that to whomsoever they applied, they had some latent moral for his own improvement, he resolved to treasure up every word he heard and everything he saw, and especially to observe the shadow of himself when it appeared. For he had an expectation that the conduct of his future self would give him the clue he missed, and would render the solution of these riddles easily. He looked about in that very place for his own image, and though the clock pointed to his usual time of day for being there, he saw no likeness of himself among the multitudes. They left the busy scene and went into an obscure part of the town, where Scrooge had never penetrated before, although he recognized its situation and its bad repute. The ways were foul and narrow. the shops and houses wretched, the people half-naked, drunken, slipshod, ugly. Alleys and archways, like so many cesspools, disgorged their offenses of smell and dirt and life upon the straggling streets, and the whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth and misery. Far in this den of infamous resort, there was a low-browed, beetling shop below a penthouse roof, where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. Upon the floor within were piled up heaps of rusty keys, nails, chains, hinges, files, scales, weights, refuse, iron of all kinds. Secrets that few would like to scrutinize were bred and hidden in mountains of unseemly rags, masses of corrupted fat, and sepulchres of bones. Sitting in among the wares he dealt in by a charcoal stove made of old bricks was a gray-haired rascal, nearly 70 years of age, who had screened himself from the cold air without by a frowsy curtaining of miscellaneous tatters hung upon a line, and smoked his pipe in all the luxury of calm retirement.
Let the charwoman alone to be the first, and let the laundress alone to be the second. Look here, old Joe. Here's a chance, if we haven't both met here without meaning it.
You couldn't have met in a better place. Come into the parlor. You were made free of it long ago, you know. And the other one ain't a stranger. Stop till I shut the door of the shop. How it squeaks. There ain't such a rusty bit of metal in the place as its own hinges, I believe. And I'm sure there's no such old bones here as mine. We're all suitable to its calling, huh? We're well matched. Come into the parlor. Come into the parlor.
What odds, then? What odds, Mrs. Dilber? Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did.
That's true indeed. No man more so.
Why, then, don't stand staring as if you was afraid, woman. Who's the wiser? We're not going to pick holes in each other's coats, I suppose.
No, indeed.
Very well, then. That's enough. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose.
No, indeed.
If he wanted to keep him after he was dead, a wicked old screw, why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have had somebody to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying, gasping out his last there alone, by himself.
It's the truest word that ever was spoke. It's a judgment on him.
I wish it was a little heavier judgment, and it should have been, you may depend upon it, if I could have laid my hands on anything else. Open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it. Speak out plain. I'm not afraid to be the first, nor afraid for her to see it. We know pretty well that we were helping ourselves before we met here, I believe. It's no sin. Open the bundle, Joe.
Mrs. Dilber first. Seats and towels, a little wearing apparel, 2 old-fashioned silver teaspoons, a pair of sugar tongs, and a few boots. Her account was stated on the wall.
I always give too much to ladies. It's a weakness of mine, and that's the way I'll ruin myself.
But
That's your account. If you asked me for another penny and made it an open question, I'd repent of being so liberal and knock off half a crown.
And now undo my bundle, Joe.
What do you call this? Bed curtains?
Bed curtains!
You don't mean to say you took him down, rings and all, with him lying there?
Yes, I do. Why not?
You were born to make your fortune, and you'll certainly do it.
I certainly shan't hold my hand when I can get anything in it by reaching it out for the sake of such a man as he was, I promise you, Joe. Don't drop that oil upon the blankets now.
His blankets?
Whose do you think? Whose else's do you think? He isn't likely to take hold without him, I dare say.
I hope he didn't die of anything catching, eh?
Oh, don't you be afraid of that. I ain't so fond of his company that I'd loiter about him for such things if he did. Ah, you may look through that shirt till your eyes ache, but you won't find a hole in it, nor a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one, too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me.
What do you call a wasting of it?
Putting it on him to be buried in, to be sure. Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again. If calico ain't good enough for such a purpose, it isn't good enough for anything. It's quite as becoming to the body. He can't look uglier than he did in that one. This is the end of it, you see. He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive to profit us when he was dead.
Spirit, I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heaven. What is this?
He recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed. Now he almost touched a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, there lay a something covered up, which, though it was dumb, announced itself in awful language. Scrooge glanced towards the phantom. Its steady hand was pointed to the head. The room was very dark, too dark to be observed with any accuracy, though Scrooge glanced round it in obedience to a secret impulse, anxious to know what kind of room it was. A pale light, rising in the outer air, fell straight upon the bed, and on it, plundered and bereft, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this man.
If this man could be raised up now, what would be his foremost thoughts? Avarice? Hard dealing? Gripping cares? They have brought him to a rich end, truly.
He lay in the dark, empty house with not a man, a woman, or a child to say that he was kind to me in this or that, and for the memory of one kind word, I will be kind to him. A cat was tearing at the door, and there was a sound of gnawing rats beneath the hearthstone. What they wanted in the room of death, and why they were so restless and disturbed, Scrooge did not dare to think.
Spirit, this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson. Trust me. Let us go.
Still the ghost pointed with an unmoved finger to the head.
I understand you, and I would do it if I could. But I have not the power, Spirit. I have not the power.
Again it seemed to look upon him.
If there is any person in the town who feels emotion caused by this man's death, show that person to me, Spirit. I beseech you.
The phantom spread its dark robe before him for a moment like a wing, and withdrawing it, revealed a room by daylight where a woman anxiously waited. She hurried to the door and met her husband, a man whose face was careworn and depressed, though he was young. He sat down to the dinner that had been hoarded for him by the fire.
The news. Is it good or bad?
Bad.
We're quite ruined?
No. There is hope yet, Caroline.
If he relents, there is. Nothing is past hope if such a miracle has happened.
He is past relenting. He is dead. What the half-drunken woman whom I told you of last night said to me when I tried to see him and obtain a week's delay, and what I thought was a mere excuse to avoid me, turns out to have been quite true. He was not only very ill, but dying then.
To whom will our death be transferred?
I don't know. But before that time, we shall be ready with the money. And even though we were not, it would be a bad fortune indeed to find so merciless a creditor in his successor. We may sleep tonight with light hearts, Caroline.
Oh.
Yes. Soften it as they would, their hearts were lighter, and it was a happier house for this man's death. The only emotion that the ghost could show him, caused by the event, was one of pleasure.
Let me see some tenderness connected with the death, or that dark chamber, Spirit, which we left just now, will be forever present to me.
The ghost conducted him through several streets familiar to his feet, and as they went along, Scrooge looked here and there to find himself. Nowhere was he to be seen. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner, and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in sewing.
And he took a child and set him in the midst of them.
Oh, the color hurts my eyes.
The color? Ah, poor Tiny Tim.
Oh, they're better now again. It makes them weak by candlelight. And I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time.
Well, past it rather, but I think he has walked a little slower than he used these few last evenings, Mother.
I have known him walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder very fast indeed.
And so have I, often.
And so have I.
But he was very light to carry, and your father loved him so that it was no trouble. No trouble. And there is your father at the door.
Merry Christmas, my darling ones. Well, you shall be done long before Sunday.
Sunday? You went today, then, Robert?
Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there on a Sunday. My little child. My little child.
He left the room and went upstairs into the room above, which was lighted cheerfully and hung with Christmas. There was a chair set close beside the child, and there were signs of someone having been there lately. Poor Bob sat down in it, and when he had thought a little and composed himself, he kissed the little face. He was reconciled to what had happened, and went down again quite happy. They drew about the fire and talked, the girls and mother working still. Bob told them of the extraordinary kindness of Mr. Scrooge's nephew, whom he had scarcely seen but once, and who, meeting him in the street that day, and seeing that he looked a little...
Just a little down, you know, when he inquired what had happened to distress me, on which, for he is the pleasantest spoken gentleman you ever heard, I told him, "I'm heartily sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit," he said, "and heartily sorry for your good wife." By the by, how he ever knew that, I don't know.
Knew what, my dear?
Why, that you were a good wife.
Everybody knows that.
Very well observed, my boy. I hope they do. Heartily sorry, he said, for your good wife. If I can be of service to you in any way, he said, giving me his card. That's where I live. Pray come to me. Now, it wasn't for the sake of anything he might be able to do for us, so much as for his kind way, that this was quite delightful. It really seemed as if he had known our Tiny Tim and felt with us.
I'm sure he's a good soul.
You would be sure of it, my dear, if you saw and spoke to him. It shouldn't be at all surprised, mark what I say, if he got Peter a better situation.
Only hear that, Peter.
And then Peter will be keeping company with someone and setting up for himself?
Get along with you.
Oh, it's just as likely as not. One of these days. Though there's plenty of time for that, my dear. But however, and whenever we part from one another, I am sure we shall none of us forget poor Tiny Tim. Shall we? Or this first parting that there was among us?
Never, Father.
Never.
And I know, my dears, that when we recollect how patient and how mild he was, although he was a little child, we shall not quarrel easily among ourselves and forget poor Tiny Tim in doing it.
No.
No,
No,
never, Father.
never.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy.
Spectre, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what man that was whom we saw lying dead.
The spirit did not stay for anything, but went straight on, as to the end just now desired, until besought by Scrooge to tarry for a moment.
This court, through which we hurry now, is where my place of occupation is, and has been for a length of time. I see the house. Let me behold what I shall be in days to come.
The spirit stopped. The hand was pointed elsewhere.
The house is yonder. Why do you point away?
The phantom pointed as before. Scrooge joined it once again, and wondering why and whither he had gone, accompanied it till they reached an iron gate. He paused to look round before entering. A churchyard. Here, then, the wretched man whose name he had now to learn lay underneath the ground. It was a worthy place, walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds, the growth of vegetation's death, not life, choked up with too much burying, fat with repleted appetite, a worthy place. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. He advanced towards it, trembling. The phantom was exactly as it had been, but he dreaded that he saw new meaning in its solemn shape.
Before I draw near to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of things that will be, or are they the shadows of things that may be only? Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends, to which, if persevered in, they must lead. But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say it is thus with what you show me.
The spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name. Ebenezer Scrooge.
Am I that man who lay upon the bed?
The finger pointed from the grave to him, and back again.
No, spirit. Oh, no. No. Spirit, hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been but for this intercourse. Why show me this if I am past all hope? Spirit, your nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me that I may yet change these shadows that you have shown me by an altered life. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me that I may sponge away the writing on this stone.
In his agony, he caught the spectral hand. It sought to free itself, but he was strong in his entreaty and detained it. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. Holding up his hands in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. Yes. And the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own, to make amends in.
Oh, I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirit of all three shall strive within me. Oh, Jacob Marley, heaven and Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, old Jacob. On my knees.
Scrooge grabbed and folded one of his bed curtains in his arms.
They are not torn down. They are not torn down, rings and all. They are here. I am here. Oh, the shadows of the things that would have been may be dispelled. They will be. I know they will. I don't know what to do. I'm as light as a feather. I am as happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy. I am as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy New Year to all the world. Hello here. Whoop, whoop, whoop. There's the saucepan that the gruel was in. There's the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. There's the corner where the ghost of Christmas present sat. There's the window where I saw the wandering spirits. It's all right. It's all true. It all happened. I don't know what day of the month it is. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Oh, never mind. I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello! Whoa, hello! Oh, glorious, glorious!
Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist, clear, bright, jovial, stirring, cold, piping for the blood to dance to. Golden sunlight, heavenly sky, sweet, fresh air, merry bells. Calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes who perhaps had loitered in to look about him.
What's today?
Huh?
What's today, my fine fellow?
Today? Why, Christmas Day!
It's Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. Well, they can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow.
Hello.
Do you know the poulterers in the street? The next street but one at the corner?
I should hope I did.
An intelligent boy. A remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, but the big one.
What, the one as big as me?
Oh, what a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes!
It's hanging there now.
It is. Go and buy it.
Humbug.
No, I am in earnest. Go and buy it and tell him to bring it here, that I may give them the direction where to take it. Come back with the man and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes, I'll give you half a crown. I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's. He won't know who sent it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim.
The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did somehow, and went downstairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. As he stood there, waiting his arrival, the knocker caught his eye.
I shall love it, as long as I live. I scarcely ever looked at it before. What an honest expression it has on its face. It's a wonderful knocker. Oh, here's the turkey. Hello. Oh, how are you? Merry Christmas.
It was a turkey. He never could have stood upon his legs, that bird. He would have snapped them off short in a minute, like sticks of sealing wax.
Why, it's impossible to carry that to Camden Town. You must have a cab.
The chuckle with which he said this, and the chuckle with which he paid for the turkey, and the chuckle with which he paid for the cab, and the chuckle with which he recompensed the boy, were only to be exceeded by the chuckle with which he sat down breathless in his chair again, and chuckled till he cried. He dressed himself all in his best, and at last got out into the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth, as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present, and walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded everyone with a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said,
Good morning, sir.
A Merry Christmas to you.
And Scrooge said often afterwards that of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, those were the blithest in his ears. He had not gone far when, coming on towards him, he beheld the portly gentleman who had walked into his counting-house the day before, and said,
Scrooge and Marley's, I believe.
It sent a pang across his heart to think how this old gentleman would look upon him when they met. But he knew what path lay straight before him, and he took it.
My dear sir, how do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you. A Merry Christmas to you, sir.
Mr. Scrooge?
Yes, that is my name, and I fear it may not be pleasant to you. Allow me to ask your pardon. And will you have the goodness...
Lord, bless me. My dear Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?
If you please. Not a farthing less. And a great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favor?
My dear sir, I don't know what to say to such munificence.
No. Don't say anything, please. Come and see me. Will you come and see me?
I will.
Thank you. I am much obliged to you. I thank you 50 times. Bless you.
He went to church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro and patted children on the head and questioned beggars and looked down into the kitchens of houses and up to the windows and found that everything could yield him pleasure. He had never dreamed that any walk, that anything could give him so much happiness. In the afternoon, he turned his steps towards his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock. But he made a dash and did it.
Oh, is your master at home, my dear? Nice girl. Very.
Oh, yes, sir.
Where is he, my love?
He's in the dining room, sir, along with Mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please.
Thank you. He knows me. I'll go in here, my dear.
He turned it gently and sidled his face in round the door. They were looking at the table, which was spread out in great array. These young housekeepers are always nervous on such points and like to see that everything is right.
Fred!
Why, bless my soul. Who's that?
It's I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?
Let him in. It is a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. His niece looked just the same. So did Topper when he came. So did the plump sister when she came. So did everyone when they came. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. That was a thing he had set his heart upon. And he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 1:15. No Bob. He was full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open that he might see him come into the tank. His hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock.
Hello. What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?
I am very sorry, sir. I am behind my time.
You are? Yes, I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please.
It's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir.
Now, I'll tell you what, my friend. I'm not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, I am about to raise your salary.
Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. He had a momentary idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him, and calling to the people in the court for help and a straitjacket.
Merry Christmas, Bob. A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family. And we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset. And knowing that such as these would be blind anyway, he thought it quite as well that they should wrinkle up their eyes and grins as have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirit, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, every one.
Masters in this hall, hear ye news, I pray. Tidings we bring you, Christ is born today. No, 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 sing we loud. God today hath raised up the poor and casted down the proud. No, 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 sing we loud. God today hath raised up the poor and casted down the proud.